In the name of the one holy and undivided Trinity, amen.
Amen.
You may be seated. It's not fair. How many times, especially those of you with children, have you heard children say this? And probably more importantly, how many times have we ourselves said this, or at least felt this way in certain situations? I mean, for me, it's more times than I can count on my hands and feet together. As a child, there was this one particular time, though, that I felt this way, and I know it must have especially stung because I often recall it and have told this story multiple times. But growing up, I had a great aunt. My brothers and I, we affectionately called, and my mother affectionately called her Aunt Bob Carr. Now, Aunt Bob Carr has provided me with many a sermon illustrations, including how she got her name. So you're going to have to wait for those for another time. But Aunt Bob Carr lived at number 2 Country Club Lane in Tuscaloosa. And when you were with her, or even just at her house, she liked to remind us of that pedigree from which we came. In fact, my uncle often just used to refer to it as the number 2 Country Club. So in what I assume was an effort to make my brothers and I more cosmopolitan, she began to take us on trips with her. Now, I'm not sure why she chose some of her early destinations. Some of those places included remote locations like Tallahassee, Florida, Memphis, Tennessee. But eventually, she let us choose where we wanted to go. Being the oldest, I got to choose first. Remember, I was in 5th grade and was a big fan, still am, of history, and I had a friend that had just returned from Colonial Williamsburg. So this is where I chose. Loved all the living history and seeing all the buildings and doing all the different things. It was a wonderful trip that summer. So the following summer, my younger brother Alan, next in line, got to choose. He chose Washington, D.C. Had a wonderful time. Fast forward a couple of years later, it was my youngest brother Dan's turn. And since he was several years younger, my parents decided to accompany him on his trip. Any guesses where they chose?
Disneyland.
Well, close, maybe. Now, my memory is a little foggy, and I can't remember if Dan actually chose this place or if it was decided for him. But Aunt Bob Carr ended up taking Dan and my parents to the beautiful historic city of Las Vegas, Nevada. Meanwhile, my brother Alan and I got to go to Camp Tuckabatchee, our scout camp. It's not fair. I demanded justice. In our reading this morning, we hear a parable from Jesus about an unjust judge, this persistent widow. And the widow pleads with the judge for justice against someone who has wronged her. This judge who says he had neither fear for God nor respect for people eventually gives in. So I think it's important when reading these parables, we often try to assign roles. We try to figure out if who this person is God or Jesus and who this other person, maybe it's us. And we're thinking maybe perhaps someone has wronged us, and we hear this parable this morning and this plea for justice from the widow. Maybe we want to assign this persistence in prayer to us. But as we're thinking about this plea for justice, I want us to pause for a moment this morning and think about this word, justice. I think so often we hear justice. It's in the context of someone who's been wronged, wants to be made right. But I think so often what sounds like justice might be revenge. Those are not the same thing. When God speaks of justice, it's always something deeper, something more relational. Whenever I think of the word, I often am reminded of text justification, maybe in a Word document, right? You know, when you're typing a document, you can left justify, or you can right justify, or center justify. However you format it, it's all about the placement of the words in relation to the margins. God is kind of like our margin. How we are justified in relation to Him, it dictates our relationship with Him. So how does this parable land meaningfully for people when God doesn't fix things for those who ask persistently? I think when all we know in our prayer life is asking, seeking, knocking, and waiting, sometimes our trust can grow a little faint. Can even get a little angry. But I think it's here, it's this moment where persistence of faith enters the picture. This message of persistence is really, this is the message of both the Old and the New Testaments. God's persistent, unshakable love for us. We may not deserve it, but it is God's relentless pursuit of us is what ensures justice. Too often when we hear the story, we focus on the judge. Maybe think that the judge is God or represents God. But what if this morning, what if we took a different view? What if God is the persistent widow in this parable this morning? The widow relentlessly pursues the judge to grant her justice. Maybe in the same way, God is relentlessly pursuing us, seeking restoration of relationship with us. Both the widow and God are seeking to heal, to fix what has been broken. The widow represents not only the need for prayer, but also the Spirit's constant work to encourage us to keep praying. The Spirit does this. The Spirit does this through you and through me, through the church. The Spirit does this work of imparting hope to those who are suffering. And by car, and probably more to the point, my parents, they would not give in to my brother Alan and mine's pleas for justice. We didn't, quote, unquote, get our prayers answered with a dispensation from scout camp to go to Vegas. But why did I want to go? I wanted to fly on an airplane. I wanted to see all the lights. Loved staying in a hotel, eating the nice meals. Sounds like a lot more fun than staying in a tent. But looking back, I think I can see how God was working in that situation. Yes, my brother and I went to Camp Tuckabashie, but my brother and I would both earn our Eagle Scout rank. In scouting, it's always played a pivotal role in my life. It's giving me life skills and shared memories. This morning, Jesus isn't trying to solve the mystery of unanswered prayer. Instead, I believe he's trying to teach the disciples and us about this necessity of persistence in prayer. Because it is in this unceasing prayer life that we find our right relationship with God. Listening, sitting in the holiness of silence. And it's in that right relationship that we can come to understand what true justice is, which is God's justice. Amen.